Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're stripping away all the aesthetics of fitness.
Right, the spandex, the mirrors.
Exactly. The whole, burn for the sake of the burn mentality. We're looking at the actual machinery underneath it all.
Which is, it's fascinating.
It really is. We have a very specific document in front of us today for this deep dive. It's an E2B program, so a program study.
Right.
And it analyzes a scientifically rigorous approach to Pilates Reformer programming. This was designed by Imrann Bana. And if you are listening to this right now thinking, oh, Pilates, that's just, stretching on a fancy bed.
Yeah, you really need to pause that thought.
Right now.
Absolutely. Because this isn't about flexibility.
No.
And it certainly isn't about relaxation. The source material we have today presents this program as a feat of neuromuscular engineering.
Neuromuscular engineering. I love that term.
It's perfectly accurate, though. We are looking at a document that treats the human body, well, less like a gym project and more like a very complex mechanical system.
A system that needs highly specific calibration.
Exactly.
And that really is the hook for me here. The mission for this deep dive is to uncover this core argument found in the study. The idea that the sequence of the exercises matters significantly more than the exercises themselves.
Yeah, the sequence is everything.
We're going to explore how this specific architecture, and that really is the right word for it, prevents injury while maximizing performance.
It really challenges the way most of us think about a workout. Usually the question you ask yourself is, what exercises should I do today? Am I doing legs? Am I doing arms?
Right.
But this program asks, when should you do them and why? It proposes that doing a squat at minute 5 produces a completely different biological result than doing that exact same squat at minute 40.
Which is just a huge concept to wrap your head around. So here is the big question for you, the listener. Have you ever considered that the timeline of your workout is actually an engineering blueprint?
Most people haven't.
No, they haven't. So we are going to walk through Imrann Bana's programming to see exactly why that is.
And the roadmap here is very distinct. The source breaks the session down into 4 main phases.
Right. So we have a counterintuitive start standing up.
Then a transition to heavy loading.
Then a shift to precision floor work.
And finally, complex integration.
So let's start with that first phase, the foundation. Now, traditionally, if you walk into almost any movement class, whether it's yoga, standard Pilates, aerobics, whatever, you expect a warm-up on the floor.
Yeah, you ease into it.
Right, maybe some cat-cows, some gentle stretching, maybe a little light jogging in place.
You want to get the blood flowing safely.
Exactly. But this program, it throws you right into the fire. It starts with you standing up on the reformer.
The source calls this reformer debout, meaning standing reformer. And you're right, it feels really aggressive.
It does.
Because you are standing on a moving carriage that is attached to springs. It's inherently unstable.
Very unstable.
But the text argues that this instability is the primary ingredient. It's not a bug, it's a feature.
It's almost like trying to stand on a skateboard that's tethered to a wall with a bungee cord.
That's a great way to picture it.
So why introduce that kind of risk level in the first 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Usually you would want to minimize risk until the client is fully warm.
It comes down to proprioception.
Okay.
The study emphasizes that standing on the reformer creates a massive postural and proprioceptive demand.
Meaning your body's awareness of where it is in space.
Exactly. When you lie down, the floor tells your body exactly where it is. The feedback is constant, it's stable.
Right, gravity just does the work.
But when you stand on a moving surface, your brain has to work overtime. It has to instantly integrate signals from mechanoreceptors in your ankles, your knees, your spine, just to keep you upright.
So you're basically waking up the nervous system's GPS.
Yes.
You're forcing the brain to create a map of the body in space before you add any heavy load.
Precisely. If you load the body with weight before that GPS is online, you're really asking for trouble. And the specific move the source highlights right here is the slide plie.
Okay, let's visualize this for the listener. This is where you have 1 foot on the stable platform and then 1 foot on the moving carriage.
Right.
And you slide the legs apart while bending the knees.
Correct. Now, on the surface, this looks like a generic leg exercise. You might look at it and think, okay, we're working the quads today.
Sure.
But the analysis points out that this is actually a targeted strike on the hip stabilizers, specifically the gluteus medius and the gluteus minimus.
We hear about the glutes constantly in fitness. But usually people mean the big muscle in the back, the glute max, the one that fills out the jeans.
The show muscle.
Right. So why the obsession with the side glutes here at the very beginning?
Because those side glutes are the absolute key to pelvic integrity. They prevent a condition the source refers to as Trendelenburg gait.
Trendelenburg gait, that sounds like a serious medical diagnosis.
It sounds intimidating, but it's actually very common. Think about when you see someone walking, perhaps when they're really tired, and their hips are swaying side to side excessively. Every time they step on one leg, the opposite hip drops down.
Oh, yeah, like a sort of sassy walk.
Right. That drop, that sassy hip drop, is a positive Trendelenburg sign.
So that's actually a sign of neuromuscular weakness.
It is. It means the gluteus medius isn't firing to hold the pelvis level. The safety system of the pelvis is essentially offline.
Wow.
And this is exactly why Bana starts with the slide plie. The text explains that this movement forces those deep pelvitrochanteric muscles to fire aggressively.
Because they have to.
Right, to prevent the carriage from sliding out too far or the hip from dropping.
So it's a mandatory engagement. You literally cannot cheat it.
You can't.
If you don't use those specific muscles, you basically do the splits involuntarily.
Exactly. By the time you finish that first sequence, those stabilizers are fully activated. They're preheated, as the source puts it, and that sets the stage for everything else that follows.
Which segues perfectly into the next section of our analysis, the science of sequencing. The source uses this term, functional preheating.
Yes.
It implies that we aren't just warming up muscles temperature-wise. We are preparing a specific function for use.
It's a logic of cumulative effect. The problematic of sequencing section of the text argues that you cannot safely load the body until you have stabilized the chassis.
So we've done the wobbly standing work. The GPS is on, the stabilizers are firing. Now the program transitions to what it calls squats on place.
Right.
These are stationary squats on the machine. This seems much more traditional.
It is more traditional, but the context has changed entirely. Why do squats now?
Right. Why not first?
Because we just woke up the glute medius. If you walked in cold and put a heavy bar on your back to squat and your stabilizers were asleep, your body would immediately look for a way to compensate.
This is where we see people's knees caving inward, right? The knock-kneed squat effect.
That's a classic compensation pattern. Or they might arch their lower back excessively because the hips aren't doing the work. The source describes this sequencing as a prophylactic strategy, a preventative measure. Because we did the slide plie first, the glute medius is already active. It holds the femur in the correct position.
Oh, I see.
So when you go into the heavy squat, the big movers, the quads and the glute max, they can do their job without the joint structure collapsing.
That is a really crucial distinction. The first exercise didn't just burn calories. It actually changed the mechanics of the second exercise.
Perfectly said.
It's like tightening the lug nuts on the wheels before you drive the car.
It enabled the second exercise to be safe. It's really a case of exercise A enables exercise B.
I really like that framing. It makes you realize that skipping the start of the class essentially breaks the safety mechanism for the middle of the class. You can't just arrive late and jump in.
Completely. You're trying to drive the car at highway speeds with the alignment completely off.
Okay, so we've stood up, we've stabilized, and we've loaded the big muscles with heavy squats. Now the program shifts gears entirely. We finally get to lie down. This is the footwork section.
But don't let the position fool you. We are changing the environment for a very specific reason. The source explains that lying down allows for segmental control.
Meaning we just don't have to worry about falling over anymore.
Right. When you are standing, your nervous system is dealing with gravity, balance, posture, and the moving carriage. That is a lot of noise for the brain.
It's overwhelming.
When you lie down, the trunk is completely supported by the carriage. The noise quiets down. Now you can isolate the legs with extreme precision.
And this is where the program introduces something that I think anyone who has done high-intensity Pilates will recognize with a shudder.
Oh, yes.
Short-range pulses.
The pulse. It's deceptively simple. The text describes this as movement with short amplitude and high frequency.
So you aren't doing the full range of motion.
No, you are staying in the absolute hardest part of the movement and just bouncing an inch up and down.
Why is that so effective?
Mm.
Because it feels infinitely harder than a full range rep. I mean, usually doing half a rep sounds like cheating, but here's the punisher.
It's all about muscle fiber recruitment. The source states that this specific technique targets type I muscle fibers.
Type I. Those are the endurance fibers, right? The slow twitch ones.
Yes. These fibers are designed to keep going for long periods. Think of a marathon runner versus a sprinter. But to really fatigue them, to actually train them, you need time under tension.
And the pulse maintains constant tension.
Exactly. There is no relief point at the top or bottom of the rep. You never lock the knee out. You never get to rest.
So you're essentially cutting off the blood flow slightly, creating that occlusion effect.
You're creating a hypoxic environment in the muscle, meaning low oxygen.
Right.
That burn you feel is the rapid accumulation of metabolites, like lactic acid. The study notes that this builds local muscle endurance.
Local is the key word there.
It is. Remember, standing was global. It was whole body balance. This is local. You are burning out the specific motor units in the quads or the hamstrings.
It's really interesting to look at the psychology of the sequence, too.
How so?
Well, you've done the scary balance stuff. You've done the heavy lifting. Now you're safe on your back, but you're being pushed to an absolute pain threshold in terms of endurance.
And fine motor control, too. The source mentions that pulsing requires deep motor unit activation. Your brain has to control the limb in this tiny window of space.
Right, if you lose focus, the range gets too big and you lose the tension.
Exactly. So it's mental endurance just as much as physical.
Let's move up the kinetic chain.
Yeah.
You destroyed the legs. Now we look at the center. The program moves to the short box series.
Yes.
For the listener visualizing this, you are sitting on a box placed on the carriage, and your feet are hooked securely under a strap.
This section is fascinating because it completely rejects the idea of the core as just the abs.
Right.
The source treats the core as a 3D architecture. It details 3 specific variations here, and each one addresses a completely different plane of motion.
Let's break those down. The first one is the round back.
This is spinal flexion. You're curling the spine into a C shape. The goal here isn't just ab strength, it's actually mobility.
Opening up the vertebrae in the lumbar region.
Exactly, you want that articulation.
Then we have the straight back. This is the one that looks so easy when you watch someone do it, but it makes you shake uncontrollably. You just sit tall and lean back.
The hinge.
Yes.
You keep the spine perfectly flat and lean back. Biomechanically, this is totally different from the round back. The source explains this specifically targets the transverse abdominis and the multifidus.
The multifidus, those are those tiny muscles running along the spine, right?
Yes, the deep stabilizers. They act like a corset around your spine. When you hinge back with a flat back, you aren't really using the six-pack muscles primarily. You are using the deep corset muscles to fight gravity and leverage.
It is pure stabilization against a lever.
Right. The longer the lever, meaning your torso as you lean back, the harder those deep muscles have to work to keep the spine from simply buckling.
And then the third variation is the oblique rollback.
Now we add rotation. We are twisting and leaning at the same time. This hits the obliques, obviously, but it also trains the body to control lateral forces.
So the takeaway from the short box section is adaptability. You aren't just doing crunches on the floor, you are flexing, you're stabilizing, and you're rotating.
If you only do crunches, you end up with a strong core in one single direction. But life is 3D. The program ensures your core can actually handle force from any angle.
Which leads us to the absolute climax of this session. The source calls this the mountain climb.
Yes.
And reading the description, this sounds like where all the threads we've discussed so far get tied together into a knot.
It is the absolute peak. Everything has to work simultaneously here. Stability, strength, endurance, core control, all of it.
Paint the picture for us. What exactly is the mountain climb?
You are in a plank position. Your hands are on the frame or the foot bar. Your feet are on the moving carriage. And the source specifies using a red spring, which implies moderate, not heavy resistance.
Wait, wouldn't a heavy spring be harder? Usually, more weight equals more work.
Not in this case.
Really?
A heavy spring would actually support you. It would help push your legs back. A lighter spring means you have to control the movement all by yourself. If the spring is too light, the carriage just shoots away from you.
Oh, I see.
So you are in this plank, and you have to pull the knees in and push them out, using your own control against that moderate tension.
Why is this the climax, though? Why not put this at the beginning to get the heart rate up?
The source references a very advanced concept here to explain that, Bernstein's model of motor control.
I saw that name in the notes. Nikolai Bernstein. He was a Soviet neurophysiologist, correct?
He was, and he fundamentally changed how we understand movement. He is famous for identifying what he called the degrees of freedom problem.
The degrees of freedom problem. That sounds almost like a philosophy term. Break that down for us.
It's actually a complex math problem that your brain solves every single second. Think of the human body as a marionette puppet.
Okay.
It has joints at the wrist, the elbow, shoulder, spine, hip, knee, ankle. Each of those joints can move in multiple directions.
Right.
That creates thousands, maybe millions, of possible combinations of movement for any given task. That is pure chaos for the brain.
Just too many options to process.
Exactly. Bernstein's question was, how does the brain instantly select the one correct combination of muscle firings to do a task out of billions of possibilities?
And the mountain climb forces the issue.
It forces the issue under extreme pressure. In the mountain climb, you have no floor stability because your feet are moving on the carriage.
Right.
You have to stabilize your shoulders, that's scapular control. You have to lock your core to prevent your back from sagging. You have to mobilize your hips to move the legs in and out.
That's a lot happening at once.
If any single one of those degrees of freedom fails, if your shoulder shrugs or your lower back arches even a little, the entire movement falls apart.
So it's a cognitive load just as much as a physical one.
Yeah.
The brain has to organize the chaos instantly.
And that is exactly why it comes last. If you hadn't done the standing work to wake up the proprioception, if you hadn't done the pulses to build the local tolerance, if you hadn't activated the deep core with the short box, you simply wouldn't have the neuromuscular capacity to solve the degrees of freedom problem here. You would fail.
That is the engineering part coming full circle.
Yeah.
You built the individual components so that you could assemble the machine at the very end.
It's a beautiful progression. You go from instability to stability to endurance to complex integration.
And effectively, once you've climbed that mountain, the work is done. But the program doesn't just stop cold. The source details a cool-down phase involving leg circles with straps.
But look closely at how the text describes it. It's not just relaxing. It uses the specific term kinesthetic awareness.
Meaning knowing where your body is again.
Yes, you have straps on your feet guiding your legs in large circles. The resistance is actually assisting you now. After the chaos of the mountain climb, this resets the entire system.
It calms the nervous system down.
It allows the brain to feel a smooth, perfect circle. It's calibrating the motion one last time before you walk out the door.
It's like saving the document before you close the computer.
That's a perfect analogy. It reinforces the neural pathway of clean movement. You leave the session with a blueprint of perfection saved in your nervous system.
So when we step back and look at this entire etude program, it really changes the definition of a hard workout. It's not just about sweating buckets or being unable to walk the next day.
No, not at all. Imrann Bana's approach here suggests that a good workout is really about intellectual organization. It's about the logic of the sequence.
It really struck me that the source emphasizes safety, not by avoiding hard things, but by preparing for them intelligently.
Targeted activation. That's the phrase to remember from this document. You earn the right to do the hard stuff by doing the smart stuff first.
It honestly makes me look at my own gym routine totally differently. Am I just throwing random inputs at my body, or am I building a narrative?
And that brings us to a final thought I want to leave the listener with today. It's something that really jumps out from the subtext of this entire study.
Let's hear it.
In the fitness world, and arguably in our culture at large, we define strength as force production. How much can I bench press? How heavy is that rock I can lift?
It's always about the output, the raw power.
But this deep dive suggests a very different definition. True strength might actually be, how well can I control my instability?
Wow, that is profound. Strength isn't just power, it's the absence of wobble.
Exactly. If you can squat 400 pounds, but you can't stand on one leg on a moving carriage without your hip dropping, are you strong? Or are you just stiff? This program argues that control, specifically control in an unpredictable environment, is the highest form of physical intelligence.
Are you strong, or are you just stiff? That is a question I think all of us should take into our next workout, whether it's on a reformer or just stretching on the living room floor.
It's the ultimate test of your mechanics.
We hope this deep dive gave you a new lens on how your body learns and moves. Thanks for exploring the architecture of movement with us today.
Stay curious.
We'll see you next time.